Malcolm, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. Now, you're working with Old Spice and the NFL to implement educational justice programs in schools based on the documentary Black Boys, which you executive produced. You say you want to help build confidence, help students feel comfortable in their own skin. How are you doing that with this program specifically?
We surprised a few high schools this morning where they saw the film and then we discussed it, and to hear them talk about how it feels to walk into a space and people be afraid of them without even knowing who they are. It reflected a lot of things that were in the film. And, so my message to them is just to, explore who you are in its totality, explore who you are as an intellectual, explore your creativity, and boldly be okay with who you are as an individual. It is not your job to make anybody in this society comfortable with your existence. It is society's job to be accepting.
That's such a great message. In terms of following your passions and being seen for who you are and not what people might think you are. Have you experienced that as an athlete, with people sort of pigeonholing you in a certain way?
Nobody ever told me that I was a creative, that I could write, that I could produce films, that I could, be a clothing designer. All things that, I've done. And that came through just self-exploration and ability to just try some things. But society would tell me otherwise, that I was just an athlete that'll probably go broke when he's done playing ball. So, I think a large part of it is how do we kind of fight against the messages that are being sent to our Black boys. Because part of it, not only, are we sending these messages, but the bad part is sometimes they believe them and they only think that they can, be an athlete and an entertainer and don't see any other way, out. We completely ignore all the other talents that they have. And so, for me, it's just the message is be yourself, explore those talents. You are worthy, regardless of what this world tells you. Don't let it change how you view yourself.
You've been so outspoken in terms of promoting social justice and being a real leading voice in the league for equality. How did you sort of break free of those societal expectations? You said until 5 years ago. Like, how did you get involved in this documentary? What made you feel like or realize you could do these things?
I started my media company, my production company, Listen Up Media, a couple years ago when I grew frustrated with how sports journalism was handling my voice. I was trying to get messages out and speak about systemic racism and all of these things that are going on in society. And all everybody wanted to talk about was what players are doing in the national anthem, what Donald Trump is saying. And, I thought it was really irresponsible as we're trying to talk about these serious, subjects. So I wanted to take control of my own voice and my own narrative. And that's why we started Listen Up Media. And the first project we were able to come on to was Black Boys. Film and things like that are really powerful tools to drive points home and get people to see other sides and kind of, bring everybody's dukes down and just really drive conversation. And so I'm really looking forward to, this endeavor through Listen Up Media to really bring compelling stories to the forefront, to be able to showcase Black people in different lights than just subhuman and superhuman, but all of the humanity in between that people don't often see. And it's a disservice to Black folks, but also to everyone who wants to understand us better. It's hard when we don't show you the full spectrum of who we are.
I've talked to Chris Long a bunch, and he in 2017 when I interviewed him, he was like, Malcolm was a huge influence for me. How have your conversations through the league, especially over this off season, with all the protests that were happening, what have those conversations been like among players that you've been talking to?
Guys are asking, what can I do? What are the action items? And I think that's really, really encouraging. You hear guys say this a lot. And I think I used to say it at one point too. It's like, I don't really deal with politics, but I think the politics are inevitable when we really talk about how we create systemic change and move these hurdles that we want gone. It all has to do with policy. And that is, to affect policy, you got to vote. And so there's been a huge push for voter registration, for voter participation. but also just players being able to advocate for groups that don't have a voice, be able to understand and learn what's going on in our society. A lot of us live in these bubbles where, you know, things don't affect us and we almost don't believe that they're real, but people are suffering every day. People have been marginalized for as long as this country has been in existence. And it's we can't ignore it anymore. We have an opportunity to move forward and change these things as a society. And, you know, we've got to just, it takes everybody to really push that message and to be doing the work individually, but also as a society.
Have you seen more white players stepping up than maybe they had in the past? Because, you know, it's a privilege to not have to think about race. It's a privilege to not have to deal with it. And I feel like I've gotten a sense that maybe more white players are being vocal, but I'd love your take on that.
Yeah, it's been a lot more, especially from the really notable guys, the quarterbacks, you know, the guys who are normally very, very quiet on these issues. And so my challenge is, okay, how do we take that further? And guys like that, and even NFL owners, is one thing to make statements and to, you know, decorate the field with all kind of messages. That stuff is great. But we all know that the NFL and other leagues are businesses, and they oftentimes lobby for their business interests. And so where the real impact can be is if they take that same lobbying power and push it towards some of the policy changes that we're looking for. That's really where the meat is on the bone. It's not just the tokenism and the messages that, you know, it's almost you'll get in trouble now if you don't do something. But it's really about the action items that we have the ability to do, especially in a year like this with so much on the line in this election.
How have you seen fans or the students you've been working with respond to these messages and you know, calls to action, really?
The reality is that everybody has the opportunity, or most of us have the opportunity to vote and to participate and to demand the changes that we want from our elected officials. It's up to us to educate ourselves on how our country works and how the system works and who we need to be, you know, addressing, what questions we need to be asking. But if you're not registered to vote, you need to get registered to vote. You know, we look at the presidential election, but don't pay attention to the state and local level, which has they directly impact us every single day. And so it is revolutionary for us to understand our local governments and participate in those elections.
Totally. Everybody listening, go make sure you're registered to vote, have a voting plan, figure it out. Malcolm, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I'm really excited to really partner with Old Spice on this initiative, trying to raise these graduation rates in the film. Please go stream Black Boys on Peacock. Work really hard on it. And I think it's a conversation that we need to have as a country, and I was glad to be a part of it.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Malcolm. I appreciate your time so much.
Thank you for having me.